Maggie, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Brooklyn. We're really excited to talk to you today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk with both of you as well.
Tell us a little bit about your background. We know you worked at IBM. How did you get into crypto? And now, what do you do at ConsenSys?
Funny story because it involves somebody else who is now at ConsenSys. So in the unit I worked at IBM, it was Watson for Financial Services. And in 2016, 2017, IBM was looking at focusing on industries. So there was a whole strategic planning group around what different technologies that IBM has or that are up and coming should we be focusing on specific industries. And I was in the financial services industry. And so we were looking at a couple of different technologies, and John Wolport, who runs Baseline Protocol and who now is at ConsenSys, was in the meeting, and he kept talking about blockchain, blockchain, blockchain. And it just piqued my interest. And so I decided to go get the book by the Tavistock brothers, like everybody, it was like kind of my first literature on blockchain. And I was super fascinated with all of the use cases and inclusion and making processes more efficient and creating different types of values and ecosystems. And so I started doing some stuff at IBM, trying to marry blockchain and Watson, which was difficult, or looking at how could blockchain be used in financial markets. And I had realized through my time there that ConsenSys was really the place to be if you wanted to work in blockchain. It was early 2017. And so I decided to jump ship and go from like big corporate America, pretty safe, to this crazy startup in Bushwick, which at the time was smaller, and the office was in this flat above this coffee shop. And so, yeah, that was sort of how I found out about it, was through a meeting. And then, just learning more about it beyond that first book and the different protocols, and knowing that Ethereum was a really exciting space to be, I decided to join ConsenSys and kind of be a part of that movement more full time and take that risk.
But you're still at ConsenSys, but now you launched SheFi. Tell us about what you're doing, how you're spending your time.
Yes, so I'm at ConsenSys, and during my time at ConsenSys, I've gotten to do a number of different projects. So I focus on two right now. One is called Web3 Cloud. So I'm a co-founder and director of business development for that. And that's really looking at building infrastructure for blockchain economies. And so that's one part of my life. And then of recent, I decided to, on my own, launch SheFi, which is an educational initiative to onboard more women in decentralized finance through both like the education component and the experimentation component. So it's really hard to actually know how each of these projects work if you don't have capital and you can't play with that capital in these projects and see what happens. So what I wanted to do with SheFi was find ways for women to both get the education component, like what is interest, and then, what is compound, and all of these different personal finance and decentralized finance terminology, and then actually get a pool of money together to put in those projects and then monitor what happens in those projects. So those are the two hats I wear. So I basically gave myself another job this year. But I just, once I had the idea, I couldn't stop. So, and I've gotten a lot of support from people at ConsenSys and Web3 Cloud. So I've been very fortunate that I can run with this while doing my other responsibilities.
Yeah, as we like to say, educate, don't intimidate. How are you getting the word out about SheFi?
When I first had the idea last fall, I started speaking about it to different teams and people, and kind of that was just getting that initial feedback and seeing if anybody wanted to join or if this was a good idea, and kind of kept it hush hush until January. And once I started getting some feedback, like, yes, this is helpful, I like this, it would be helpful to see this, and people, agreeing to the mission, vision, goals, and agreeing to the mechanics of it. I went to Joe and I was like, hey, I would like to, do this, just so he was aware of it. And then he was like, oh, when can you start writing about it? And I was like, wait, I'm more of a crawl, walk, run person. So I was like, once I start really seeing like the positive impacts it's having within this cohort of women in ConsenSys, I will be ready to take it more public. So I had done a couple sessions, and like I said, I was getting really positive feedback from the women that were joining the sessions. And so I decided, like, there's no time like the present to get the word out there. So this spring, I released that first blog post, which outlined what I saw some of the issues were in traditional finance, and what is potentially already an issue in decentralized finance and crypto, but like what it could become if we don't start educating now. And so just after that blog post, I got a lot of inbound, and I am starting to publish a blog into Crypt, which is not necessarily about SheFi, but breaking down DeFi in general. So the whole goal of SheFi too is to speak DeFi in terms that people can understand. So crypto has a lot of its own dictionaries and lexicons, and so and then finance also has all of those as well. So this blog is more to just make it accessible for everybody. And then I will also, be publishing like short newsletters through the SheFi newsletter, just, trying to keep things simple, and then kind of like grow with my users too. So get into more complex topics. And then, I'm running a cohort inside of ConsenSys. The hope is probably fall or later in the year, we can run like a non-ConsenSys cohort, and get women of like different backgrounds, different age ranges, and kind of see what like community looks like outside of this kind of testing ground. So, a couple of different ways, but mainly I'll be publishing first a lot of just content online and trying to get the brand out there. And then after that, starting to scale the actual educational and experimentation component.
Piggybacking off of what Nisa said about women in crypto and how that's on the rise, and education is certainly like a huge component of that. But what is there anything else that you think it'll take to get the numbers in crypto more on like closer to 50-50, which is, I think greater than 50-50 would be even better, but 50-50 is a good start.
I do think that is a very difficult challenge. There's a lot of systemic issues why finance services and tools are less accessible to women, or why women are less engaged with it, and definitely cannot solve all of that. And I think a lot of that has to be solved as well in order to get more women into crypto, because you already have the difficulties with engaging with regular finance, current finance, and then you're adding this blockchain component on it, which, like I mentioned a bit earlier, has its whole own host of words and ways of interacting and ways of holding your funds, and responsibilities placed on you, on top of then learning about all these financial tools and services. So I think that seeing 50-50 is a goal that we should always be striving to, but I'm not exactly sure like when that timeline would be. And I think that like I said, there has to be a lot of education to go along with it. And then there also has to be a lot of experimentation. So if we don't have money to play with and to put in these projects, for many reasons, we're not whales, our money goes other places, you have to pay rent, you have to hold your ether. There's just like a lot of different challenges. You have children, whatever it is. I think that we'll have to figure out ways to get capital in the hands of women, that they can actually start interacting with these projects. Because if you can interact in a more safe way, like having the rails up on the bowling alley, then once you have that knowledge, you can actually go out and start using your own money and making those decisions. So, I think we have a really long way to go, but I hope with SheFi that by making things accessible and by getting that play part in, that experimentation part in, we can start to bring confidence to women, because they understand the terms, they know what the project is like. DeFi does make things more accessible, so it's easier in a sense to engage with a lot of these projects. And then we can hopefully just start getting people excited. I think we really have to get people excited about like the power of owning your money, and the power of not needing a lot of money in order to do things with it that are beneficial. So, and then with that comes confidence. So that's maybe not directly answering what you asked, but I think it, I guess in a lot of other ways, the more initiatives we have, the more we engage with our friends who aren't in crypto, and they engage with their friends, the more that you make sure that you're branding things, or you're talking about topics that are actually friendly. I think we have like a lot of naming issues in crypto, and it kind of shows that it's still a little bit of an insider's club. And the fact that we're not changing those names to make things more accessible concerns me. So, we need to start thinking about in the way that we do things. Like if this is for the world, let's make it for the world.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I love what you mentioned, highlighting the way crypto is talked about and getting individuals to understand the power of owning your money. Because I think a lot of people in crypto very gung-ho, especially given the current climate and how printing money is just happening nonstop. But so we talk a lot about solutions. It's kind of like an echo chamber of solutions, but the everyday consumer doesn't necessarily think of the structure of our government and how money is being printed as a problem yet. So if they don't understand the problem, they're not going to care about the solution.
Yes. And I think that the current financial system is so complex and convoluted. A lot of people will not be aware of even how all this money printing is going to be pushed back on them. You really have to be plugged into all this stuff and follow the right people to understand the consequences of what the government is doing and who it impacts the most. And we have so much to be aware of right now that is not always high or accessible on everybody's list. So yeah, like we have a lot of barriers to break down, but I do think crypto has a unique way to present itself as something new and be a little bit more accessible in some ways that can allow people to engage with it in a way that is almost easier once we get past some of the like basics of a wallet and your funds and being responsible.
Well, I think a number of points. I think the government is, aware that half of the population doesn't understand what's going on, and that benefits the other half. So it's incumbent upon us as individuals to learn as much as we can. But as you say, there isn't always an incentive to learn. And what I found from being an investor for a long time is that women are very philanthropic and will give to charity, but at the same time, they're afraid of making investments. And I noticed that SheFi is a nonprofit, and I'm wondering if that was intentional to try and tap into that cultural instinct and to get more people interested, because there is that nonprofit component to it.
Funny you mentioned that. So SheFi sort of came about. I was talking to another ConsenSys employee. They had done an NCAA bracket pool. And so that's when, everyone puts in some money into a pot and then the winner gets to take the pot. And while the tournament was going on, they put that money in compound just to see what would happen to it, because it was in their mind, it was money they had already given up and somebody was going to get it. And all of them were willing to like risk something happening to it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so awesome. And so women were included in that, but they did not choose to participate, likely because basketball isn't always something that the women in ConsenSys happen to be engaged with or want to spend money on. So this is kind of where that idea came from. So you're right. So then my next thought, as I was trying to, there's this like the seed was planted in my head that there was something there that was tugging at me. And I was like, what can women rally around? And I wanted it to be globally accessible too. So I don't really watch TV anyway. So like The Bachelorette or The Bachelor or these kind of like more gimmicky things that, we could say tend to draw more female audiences. Like I didn't feel that was accessible to everybody. And so what was to me was that we, like you said, like we donate to nonprofits, we can all rally around a good cause. So I basically took the model of the bracket, so women pooling money together, but instead of it going to one person in the end or, people getting their money back, I wanted it to be like, this is money you're not going to get back. So we're going to be comfortable to play with it. And what's even better is that this is going to go to a charity that focuses on science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And so, in that way, I think I was also trying to target both ends of the funnel. So like there's women in tech already, like it's that might be, trying to get them educated more in this space. And then let's think about like the girls at the other end of the funnel and how can we make a continuous loop. So maybe in the future, these initiatives, this hope to get women 50% in crypto and DeFi is less because we're doing something now with the funds that we're pulling together to experiment with.
It never even occurred to me until you said it, how it takes the risk away with money that you're already probably not going to recover because there's only one winner of a typical like pool. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that, you know, being in crypto since 2016, 17, like I'm hodling my ETH, right? Like holding it forever. Like that's all I've been told to do. And so I knew it was going to be difficult to like reach into that pocket necessarily and just start playing around. But, you know, if you can, everyone chose between like, let's say 5 DAI, you know, the stable coin that is 1-to-1 pegged with the US dollar, to like 30 DAI. And so it was like choose your own amount, pool it in a wallet, and then we'll donate that at the end of the course.
So Maggie, where can women go for more information or to find you?
Yeah, so I do have a website. I have a Squarespace. It's www.shefi.org. So that is one place to find me. We also have a Twitter, SHE__fi. So she 2_fi. And then my personal Twitter is MELOVE_07. And then if you go to the website, you can sign up for the newsletter. We'll start, you know, sending out some initial content, and that's including soon a survey, because so many people signed up and a lot of them aren't crypto. So want to make sure that if I'm sending out content there, you know, it is focused on DeFi, but we can start with wallets, or we can, you know, start with the basics to make it super accessible. So website, newsletter, Twitter.
Well, great. Thanks so much for coming to talk to us today.
Yeah.
Yes, I had a wonderful time. Always wonderful to meet more women in the space who are very much aligned in the whole, let's get the word out, let's educate, let's make things accessible. In scaling any blockchain, we're going to need communicators. So it's awesome that you guys are doing this.